Hello, my name is Joe Goble.
Mr. Goble, when and where were you born? When were you born?
Oh, September 10th, 1914.
So how old are you right now?
103 and 2/3.
Where were you born, Mr. Goble?
I was born in Ardell County, North Carolina.
What specific units were you in during your time in the service?
B Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines.
What division?
B Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines.
And what division?
1st Division.
And what was your specific role in the 1st Marine Division, Mr. Goble?
Beg your pardon.
What was your specific role in the 1st Marine Division?
I don't know.
What was your job in the 1st Marine Division? You were a sergeant, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell me about the role of a sergeant in combat?
Oh, a sergeant is a leader. He's supposed to understand the situation and take advantage of the what little advantage you have for his men to try to keep them out of line of fire and still do their job.
And what was the highest award for valor you received in combat, Mr. Goble?
The Silver Star Medal.
Were you ever wounded, Mr. Goble?
I was definitely wounded.
Where on your body were you wounded?
My left leg, just above the knee, received a Japanese bullet loaded with powder. It exploded inside my leg, carrying pieces of bone up my leg, and half a bullet followed the bone all the way up to my hip, and I still carry half a bullet in my leg.
What was the highest rank you achieved by the time you left the service?
I received, believe it or not, 10 days before I was wounded, the rank of sergeant, of platoon sergeant, and I didn't get to use that rank but about 4 or 5 days.
And you were supposed to get a battlefield commission, right?
Get out.
You were going to get a battlefield commission, right?
Oh yes, yeah. I was going. I'd already got the commission, but I was hit a few days after I got it.
And what island did you see combat on in World War II?
I was in the Battle of Guadalcanal.
Perfect. Can you borrow that for a sec, Mr. Goble? I'm just going to wipe something for you. Okay. Mr. Goble, I want to backtrack a little bit. You said you were born in Ardell County, right?
Right.
Did you grow up there?
I finished school and began looking for work. Work was very hard to find, so I worked for my brother on the farm for a year and raised enough money to get out on my own and try to find work.
Can you tell me the struggles of growing up during the Great Depression? What do you remember about that?
Well, actually, living through that at the time, you didn't realize that you was in a really bad condition. But living like we did, we were lucky to have parents that could control the family.
What was your father's occupation?
He was a farm owner.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Did your brothers go into the service as well?
One of them did. The older one was lucky enough that my family had got another farm 18 miles away, and he was in control of that farm.
So he got an exemption.
Yeah.
What did you want to do with your life when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I wanted to, when I started growing up, I wanted to be in the Air Force, but it didn't work out like that.
I know that I've read up on you, and I know that you've had a storied life even before the Marine Corps. You were working as a taxi driver. You went up to Washington, D.C. as a short line cook. All these different things. Can you take me through how did you end up joining the Marine Corps in the first place?
Well, in the first place, I still was looking for work. I went. They were building this big bank dam down in Savannah, Georgia. Me and another man went down and tried to get a job and clearing the right of way. And we hitchhiked all the way down and got there in time to go to the office, open field office, where they hired labor for clearing right of way. And he said, "We sure can use you 2 fellers. Where do you live now?" I said, "Well, I was looking for a home when we could, waiting for you to open your office." He said, "What do you mean looking for a home? Where you actually live?" And I said, "Well, we live for a man's brother in South Carolina." And he said, "You don't live in Augusta, Georgia, which is right there?" I said, "No, we don't." He said, "I'm sorry, we can't hire somebody unless they live here 90 days. So we was out of work, no money, and I made it back home and got a job with FCX, that's Farm Corporate Exchange, for $1 a day, and lived 5 miles away, hitchhiked back and forth. Luckily, back in those days, people would pick you up on the highway.
Was it a guarantee that you would always get picked up, or did you ever have to walk those 5 miles?
No, mostly in the afternoon. When in the evening, people were too hurried to get home, so they didn't pick you up very good in the afternoon. But finally, I saved $50. I thought I needed to go to Washington, D.C. Well, I found out that a man who graduated high school with me went to Washington, got a job in a restaurant. So me and another man hitchhiked to Washington, and I walked in the office of this Child's Restaurant. Child's Restaurant is a big restaurant that had, believe it or not, 167 stores over the United States. And so they hired me immediately as janitor to clean 2 floors and the streets in front of the restaurant. And paid $2 a day any meals, which was big money. And that was in July. And by Christmas time come, I had a little money saved up, and as a French Canadian that had become friendly with, he's a good carpenter, and I thought, well, maybe I'd change jobs. So we said Miami, Florida is the best place to look for work right now. So we took a Christmas vacation and went to Miami. Well, it's funny the way we got there. We went to the bus station and bought our tickets at Greyhound bus, and was reading the newspaper for waiting on the bus, and it says, "Help drive to Miami, Florida, free trip." So we called the man, and he says, "I was just packing to leave. You'll be ready in 45 minutes, so cancel your ticket." So we canceled our ticket and got to help drive a limousine to Miami, Florida, going through Virginia, Petersburg, Virginia. There's snow and ice on the road, and we hit a bridge over the river. I'm ahead of myself. We got to Georgia and picked up a newspaper and saw it where that bus we had a ticket for hit the ice on the river and went over the railing into the river, and almost each one of the passengers died on that trip. So that's one time we missed by reading the newspaper and getting a trip to Miami. We got to Miami and couldn't get a job this Christmas. They had a Child's restaurant there, so I went to Child's, and Mr. Johnson, I used to work for a week or two for him in Washington. He said, "Well, the only thing I got now is concessions to take people's orders at nighttime in the hotel." So I took the job, and I'd been working about 2 hours. Mr. Johnson called us, said, "I have to let you go. You're not relieved from your job in Washington. You have to be back Monday morning." So there I was out of work again. Next morning, we started on the road to hitchhike, and Paquette was the Frenchman's name. Paquette says, "I know how to mix cleaning solution to wash cars with." So we got some gallon cans and went up on the highway and to a Chevrolet place, and I told him we were professional auto cleaners. He said, "Well, there's an old Chevrolet out there," and he said, "Go out there and we'll wash that old Chevrolet." And we got it about half washed, and the cops come, and what he did, he turned us in for not having a place to live. And the cops told us, "If you get out of town now, we'll let you go." So we hitchhiked back. He didn't do it. I hitchhiked back to North Carolina to my parents' place, stayed overnight there, and got up the next morning. And a friend of mine was home on vacation, and I called him, and he picked us up and took us to Washington with him. So we was back on time, and it didn't bother us at our job. So I worked there around 4 years and increased the jobs on the Child's restaurant to first order cook on making salads and sandwiches, things like that. And it was a good job. It paid $3 a day in meals. And that's just the beginning. Went back to Child's, and they had 2 stores in Chicago. And meantime, I'd saved enough money to buy a 34 Ford, a used Ford, and me and the bartender took off Chicago. We got there, and I went into one of their Child's restaurants, and Clyde was bartender that went with me. So we sat down at the bar, And Mr. Bickles used to be my boss in Washington, had been transferred there. So he sat down 2 or 3 stools from us, didn't notice us, and started eating peanuts. And he looked up there and saw, "What in the world are you guys doing here?" I said, "We're looking for work." He says, "Shh, be quiet. Come on and sit at the table over on the other side of the room." Got over and he said, just at the right time, he said, "I need a bartender. This has been here too long. And Clyde, you can come to work Thursday." And he said, "Joe, right now I don't have an order cook job, but I need a storeroom man to take care of incoming and outgoing food supplies. And clean the basement up, part of your job." I liked the job. I worked there 8 months and saw some strange things in Chicago. Believe it or not, I hate to tell this, but I was walking home from work one day and I saw a crowd by the side of a big old building where the windows opened and there's a woman down there having a baby. And this crowd was watching and not doing anything. So I left immediately. Strange things happen. After I was in 8 months in Chicago, Mr. Childs passed away. And his 170-some stores, I think that's right, 170-some stores began to fade away. Their family weren't too interested in stores, so I had to change jobs. That's when we went back to Washington, and I started driving a taxi cab. I made good money. If I worked about 14 hours a day driving a cab, averaged out about $9 a day, big money. And about a year later, war began to be talked, and I decided, well, I'm not going to let them put me in the Army. I'll just go in the Marines.
Why? Why the Marine Corps?
I saw a Marine, a friend of mine from home in Marine clothes, and I liked the uniforms. So I thought, there's the one for me. So I went home, and I still had my car. So I drove to Charlotte and tried to get in the Marine Corps. They said, well, we only are 6 a month, and 6 in Washington, 6 in Asheville, 6 in Winston, 6 in Greensboro, and 6 in Raleigh. And all of them were full, I think. So the man said, go to Winston-Salem. That's the best chance of getting in the Marine Corps. So I drove over to Winston-Salem, and he said, I just filled the last job here. Raleigh has 2 openings. He said, if you get to Raleigh from here right now, I'll tell them to hold one of those jobs for you. So I drove my car back home and took a bus to Raleigh. The Marines paid for my bus trip, and they told me to be there first thing in the morning. And then at 8 o'clock I was there when they opened the door. So he says, you're the one, you're hard. That's the way I got in the Marine Corps.
Now this is before Pearl Harbor. This is back in what year?
This is before the war.
Do you remember what year you joined the Marine Corps?
October 1940.
So this is over a year before the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Oh yeah.
When you joined the Marine Corps, Did you feel like the U.S. was going to get involved in the war eventually?
I felt from my very bones that there's going to be a war.
And so you volunteered to join the Marine Corps. After you get into the Corps, where do they send you?
They sent me to Parris Island for boot camp in Parris Island, 144 platoon number.
Can you take me through a typical day of boot camp?
Well, first we go in and they issue your first uniforms and put you in a training platoon, 144 number. And that's 12 weeks of hard training. We were lucky enough to have a platoon leader that had been in Cuba. No, he had been in Haiti for 7 years as chief of police in the Marine Corps in Haiti. And he was redheaded, and when I first saw him I thought, man, he's going to be tough. He turned out to be this smartest deal I ever got in. He was fair, he traded us like gentlemen, and he taught us how to act and how to fight, and he was a little too easy, I thought, for a while. Turned out he wasn't quite so easy as I thought. Anyway, I graduated in 12 weeks, and they were loading them up to go to Cuba. First they were loading them up to go to Iceland, and a strange thing happens again. We were in Charleston, South Carolina, to load up more Marines that had been put in the Marine Corps. And they were taking on supplies, and a sailor got a little too much whiskey coming in at nighttime and went down in the storage room to sleep it off until he was sober. And he heard a noise about 1 o'clock in the room, and he saw a man lighting a fire to some supplies in the hold, so he immediately called for help. And turned out that man was a German fifth column. He'd been in the Navy 19 years, and he'd been giving information out from the Navy all those years. And they just got caught setting fire to it inside. I understand he got a lifetime in the Navy prison.
And so that stopped you guys from going to Iceland?
Yeah, so we missed a ship that was going to Iceland. And it took 6 weeks to resupply this ship. And in the meantime, we got plenty of liberty and no money in Augusta, Georgia.
Do me a favor, Mr. Goble, before we continue. Okay, Mr. Goble, so you were saying you guys were supposed to go to Iceland, but because of the fire from the German spy, you ended up having 6 weeks of liberty in Augusta, Georgia. And then what happened?
Actually, I was wrong on the town. It was Charleston, South Carolina.
In Charleston, okay. So after your liberty, is that when you go to Cuba?
That's when the ship was finished loaded with ammunition, and they sent us to Cuba.
And what was the purpose of your time in Cuba? What were you guys all learning?
They were building the 1st Marine Division. And World War I, 1st Marine Division was dismantled after the war, so they were rebuilding the 1st Marine Division.
And tell me about the kind of training that took place in Cuba, please.
Well, there was a lot of mountain climbing, trail hiking, learn how to live on nothing, things like that.
Can you tell me the training you received on how to live without water and how long you could go without water?
Well, strange you ask that question, because we learned that in the woods or the mountains of Cuba there was cactus, and those little red cactus fruit had stickers all over it. You learn how to peel the cactus berries and suck the juice out of those berries. And that was survivors, and people learned to do that pretty quick.
And what about the stones that you would put under your tongue?
Oh, we had an old man and an old sergeant in there, used to work on the railroad, and he taught us to get a little round pebble and put it under your tongue when you was real thirsty, and try not to swallow it, and it would bring moisture in the mouth, and it did too. You could hold that stone in your mouth for a while, and your mouth was wet again.
And did it work?
It worked, yeah. Sure.
When you enlisted in the Marine Corps, it was before the war broke out. So did you enlist for 4 years then? It wasn't for the duration of the war, because there was no war.
That's what timing was. 4 years when you enlisted. That's what you signed up for.
Did you end up putting all 4 years in?
Yeah.
Did you end up serving all 4 years?
No, I did not.
So they gave you a medical discharge.
Yeah.
So after Cuba, moving forward, can you take me through how you guys eventually get to Guadalcanal?
Well, first we had training. We learned how to load ship. So the things you needed first was where you put your hands on it, like food supplies was supposed to be put up near the top, and most ships didn't pay any attention to that, and the food supply was in the wrong place, down in the bottom of the ship. Well, I was trying to name it as, I can't remember the name of this ship. In fact, a lot of stuff I don't remember.
I don't know about that. You remember quite a bit. But so you go on a ship. I know to get to Guadalcanal, you guys had to go through the Panama Canal, right?
Well, we loaded ships in Virginia, and as we pulled in to load the ship, said it would be 3 days before the ship pulled out. Anyone that had close liberty could possibly get it some time out. And another guy and myself took a day and a half and just messed around in Virginia. And I looked at my watch one time, and man, it's time to load the ship. We'd better get there. And it was hard. Finally got a ride down we found a taxi that was agreed to take us down to the docks, number 12 dock. And when we got there wasn't any ship in sight. And the dock was empty. And there's somebody in the office, he says, "You're at an Army dock. It's not the Navy dock. It's 12 miles to the Navy dock."
So what did you do? Well,
we tried to call, couldn't get any answer. And a mailman pulled in the officer at the Army Depot, and we talked him into taking us to number 12 dog. Navy number 12 dog.
And you got there in time?
We got there, they were loading the ship's the last cargo was going aboard at 12 o'clock at night. We jumped on the cargo and rode a cargo to the ship and got on and didn't miss a beat, went on to our station.
Now, Mr. Goble, after you got on the ship, can you tell me about the experience you had against the German submarine?
Well, at first I was still corporal and going through the storm. There was a storm going on at that time. I took an examination for sergeant, and the water was coming in over the floor and running down the stairs. It was such a heavy rainstorm that the water was running off the dock into the bedrooms. And I went on and finished my examination and won okay. And just got up the next morning and walked up on the deck. And at that time I was smoking a cigarette. And I looked out there and I saw the wake of something going through the water, coming towards us. And I looked out, I figured, that's a torpedo. So I run to tell, but I was too late. It passed the fantail of the ship about 30 or 40 yards, missed our ship. So we were lucky on that one. But I read later where that they lost during World War II about 200 ships and a lot of men from German submarines.
Did they drop depth charges?
We had 13 destroyers with us, and they also kept dropping depth charges. And the word got out that they possibly did sink one submarine.
So, moving forward, you guys go through the Panama Canal to get to the South Pacific.
Yeah.
Correct? When you make your way towards Guadalcanal, was there a naval bombardment before the invasion?
What?
When you got to the shore of Guadalcanal, was there a naval bombardment before the invasion?
I think he had the wrong location. We went through the canal, Panama Canal, and stopped in San Diego to load fruit and supplies. And one of our men went over the hill, a fellow named William A. Rust. He's one of my best men, but he went back to Virginia, to his hometown right out of Chicago. And so we couldn't get him back. Anyway, going ahead for this particular thing, they finally caught him and sent him to Guadalcanal with us, and he did get killed in the service. In fact, he was the one I was dragging.
So the man whose life you tried to save, he ended up going AWOL back in the States.
Yeah.
So he almost lived. If he stayed in the States, he would have never got killed like that.
Probably had some prison time.
Boy. So did you meet him again on Guadalcanal? That's where you met him again?
He got back in my platoon.
Were you angry at him?
No, he turned out to be a pretty good soldier.
So tell me about the invasion of Guadalcanal.
Well, the 5th Marines was the ones that made the invasion. Our ship went to some British Samoa and unloaded. Beautiful. When we got in about 5 miles, the captain come over with his loudspeaker said, "Look up on the mountain, you'll see a tombstone, and that's Robert Louis Stevenson's tombstone." Beautiful area. So we stayed 8 months on British Samoa because the Japanese had shelled it a couple times, and they thought they may get ready for a landing there, but it turned out it was a dummy thing for the Japs to do because it didn't serve any purpose.
Were you 8 months on Samoa or 8 weeks?
8 months.
Okay, that's a long time on Samoa.
Yeah.
And so from Samoa is where you go to Guadalcanal.
Then they loaded us. The attack, the 5th Marines made on Guadalcanal. We were immediately loaded, and anyway, it took us all day and all night to load. And then we had a long ways to go. And the North Carolina ship had been hit and had a big hole in the side. And it went in battle with us in Guadalcanal with that hole in the side.
Were you guys, by the time you guys got to Guadalcanal, were you taking on any fire?
No, we were fortunate. I was made sergeant of the guard the night we went to Guadalcanal, so I got to sleep in the officers' quarters, and I make the rounds during the night. And next morning, we pulled into Guadalcanal and started unloading, and he went down a cargo net, and it was sort of a storm. That cargo net was hard to hold on to, but I got ashore and was carrying food supplies, boxes and boxes, hundreds of boxes of back office of sand, and I heard a plane and looked, and there's a plane coming real low from another island, and that's a Japanese plane. So the ship next to us started firing and hit the plane, and the plane was able to keep. It went about a mile up and circled to come back and crashed right in front of us in the water, and it was one of our own planes that some ship next to us fired on it because it come in from the wrong direction.
Were other Marines also firing at it, or was just the ship?
No, there's other Marines.
It was the Navy guys who thought it was a Japanese plane.
Yeah, I don't think there's any Marines on that ship that was firing.
Wow. And so, can you talk to me about the terrain on Guadalcanal, please?
Well, there's thousands of acres of coconut along the beach, and all the natives work for coconut people. And then back it comes to one river after another. There's more streams on that mountain, coming off of that mountain.
So it's heavily forested. It's a jungle, all jungle.
The jungles, after you got out of the coconut groves towards the mountains, you get into the jungles, and you couldn't see very far in them. in the jungles. So it was very dangerous in those jungles.
And so, Mr. Goble, you guys land on the shores of Guadalcanal, and the Navy ships are unloading their cargo, right?
Yeah.
How long do they unload their cargo for, and what happens?
Well, they had to pull out at nighttime because the Japanese controlled the bay at night, and the Navy controlled it in daytime. The Japanese left before daylight, and we were able to unload ships pretty well once the Navy took over. Then the Navy pulled out, but some of them didn't make it. The ship I had been on was called the Elliott. Elliott was sunk, and most of its cargo was sunk with it.
So, because the Navy ships would leave, you guys were stranded with only what you were able to unload, right?
Yeah.
When the American Navy ships would go away, what do you remember about the Japanese Navy ships coming in?
Well, they moved us back into the mountains, so we didn't worry too much about the Japanese ships. We're too busy trying to get organized and ready to go back in further into the jungle.
What do you remember about the shelling, though? The Japanese ships would shell you guys.
Well, the first night we were right there in the coconut grove, and the Japanese come in and started shelling. And then, they were big Japanese ships too, and surprised me. They told us, dig in. We had nothing to dig in with, so I found a little wash out place that was a little lower than the land. I laid down in that, and a little while the Jap started firing, and a big shell come scooting across the land right on top of the land, and I thought it was going to blow up, but it went on to hit the back of a head. You know what a head is?
Like a bathroom.
Yeah. So the bullet, the shell was a 16-inch shell, and it just buried itself in the ground there.
How close was it to you?
It's probably 50 yards.
Wow.
But it was closer when it passed.
And, I mean, what was it like? Could you see that first night when the Japanese ships were off of the shore? Could you see the ships? I mean, how close did they get?
Well, the battleship, I think it's only one battleship, and there's a cruiser and several destroyers. And you could just see the lights. You had your head buried almost, so you didn't have time to do much looking.
But Mr. Goble, what is that like to have these big naval shells landing around you and going off?
Well, we didn't have much of that in the Navy. Mostly the Air Force dropping bombs.
Was that Washing Machine Charlie?
Well, it didn't. It dropped little bombs. It was just something to scare us, so we couldn't sleep.
I just want to say hey.
What were you saying about Washing Machine Charlie, sir?
It was just flying over each night with a motor out of sync, so it made noise, and just to keep us from sleeping, they'd drop a bomb down, and a little bomb didn't mount to anything. but they'd come every night and you couldn't sleep very well. Finally, you get used to it.
That first night, I remember reading from your memoir, you had an incident with a lieutenant. He was a young lieutenant and he was crying. Do you know what I'm talking? Do you remember what I'm talking about? A young lieutenant, he was crying and he came to you.
Oh yeah, that was when they was firing, and he coming rolling in beside me, and so the land was a little lower there, so I just didn't pay much attention to him.
But you thought it was a wounded Marine the way he was crying.
Yeah, I thought it was, but he's just scared.
Were you scared?
Of course I was scared. The longer you get there, the more number you get numb. But I wasn't numb then.
Because that was your first experience under fire. So moving forward, Mr. Goble, after you guys get off of the beach area and past the coconut groves, do you remember the first time you encountered the Japanese?
Well, the first time we were moving up close to the river and planned on crossing the river. And it got dark on us down there. When it gets dark, you can't see anything. And we were going into the jungle so thick that there's this little trail. And the leader of my platoon got blocked with trash and he couldn't find his way out. And you couldn't see you could hold your hand up, but couldn't see your hand, is so dark. And in the field, you got down on your hands and knees and felt the trail, and finally come to an opening right before we got to the river. And the whole battalion was there. It took all night to get them across the river. And we got to the other side. Most of them was so wet they carried water on their clothing, and it made the mountains so slick with mud that sometimes you just get almost to the top and you slide it all the way back.
Did that happen to you?
I caught on how to dig into his toes to hold them. Got up to the top and the moon was shining almost like daylight up there, which was very unusual. And I figured there's Japs all around, so me and another fellow found 6 dead bodies. They laid them out about 2 foot apart, and we got between those bodies and slept that night.
You got 6 dead Japanese soldiers.
No, there's American soldiers, American Marines.
You found 6 dead Marines.
Yeah, they laid them out in a row, and it was a platoon ahead of us.
And so you and the other Marines slept in between them,
Yeah.
so that if the Japanese came, they would think that you were dead.
Well, we just thought it was maybe a little safer there. Got up the next morning, two of them got to playing cards in a draw where it was low, and I yelled at them. I said, "Get out of that draw. That's where the next shell's going to come up that draw." Sure enough, they hadn't got more than 10 feet away from the place when some machine gun down opened up, and it went right up that draw where they were. The cards flew everywhere.
So you saved their life.
I guess so.
So, Was it common? I mean, talk to me about your experiences against the Japanese snipers up in the trees. What do you remember about that, Mr. Goble?
Well, first I run into that the first day. First day was on the trail. We had crossed the river and went up the river ways to see if the Japs was on that side of the river. And they had been there, but they'd moved. So they, Colonel Puller says, "Goble, come here." Yes, sir, Colonel. He says, "Take 2 men and cross the river and see if you get any Japs over there." And the water was about straddled deep, crossing the river, wide river. Got about 10 to 15 yards from the shore where the trees were hanging over the water, and a bullet hit the water right beside my leg. And I said, "Man, there's Japs over here, all right. That has to be a sniper." We never could find that sniper. He evidently was the only one there.
Talking about snipers, I know you wrote a story about an incident with Colonel Puller and a sniper. I think like Colonel Puller kicked the sniper or something, or he stomped on him.
Oh, yeah.
Can you where did that happen?
That was right before I crossed the river.
So what happened?
Well, I heard a gunfire, and I looked out, and Colonel Puller had shot a sniper out of a tree, and when it fell right by his body where he was standing. A big log was there, so Puller jumped across the log, and jumped on that Japanese to be sure he was dead. Jumped up and down on that Japanese.
What did you think of Chesty Puller as a leader?
There's never been a man any braver or had more sense about what to do than Chesty Puller.
What made him a good leader, would you say? I mean, why were so many Marines willing to follow him, knowing that it could lead to their death?
Well, he was down in the Haiti area. I don't know, just what I read about it, that he was leading a troop to find a wild man, and was leading the troops, enemy troops. And I don't know too much about that, so.
But you thought he was a good leader.
He proved to be a good leader.
Your first major combat experience was the Little Dunkirk. Is that right?
No, that was the second one. The first one, we were going to give orders to get in, go up the river and get across the river and get behind the Japanese. Well, took us all day long to cross them cattle range because we didn't want to move too fast, and you can't move a big group of Marines very fast. Well, Puller got past me and got up, and there's a big log, huge log laying there from a tree that had fell, and Puller was standing on his knees behind that log, and fire was coming from all across the front, and the other leader, we didn't know it at the time, had gotten shot through the mouth and was dead. And so Puller said, "Sarge, take 3 men and get up on that ridge and see if you can find out where those machine guns are coming from. Well, I looked around and there's only one man, that's me. The other two was laying down behind the log. Puller didn't say anything to them, so he motioned me to go on. So I went on up towards the top of the ridge, and nothing happened. So Puller knew better than I did that the Japs already left. But he sure gave me a scare.
But that incident, can you just go into a little more detail about it? What kind of opposition were you facing? It was how many different machine guns?
Well, we crossed a little, what I call a branch, a little stream of water. And just as I got up on top, a machine gun opened up and bullets went right by my body. Just a string of bullets went by. So I rolled over behind another tree there. And that's when Puller called me and told me to move up and find out if there's any more Japs up there.
And when you got behind the tree, the Japanese were still firing at you, right?
He fired for one more time, one more round. And I guess that must have been when they were ready to leave, because right after that's when they moved me up to see if it any more.
And you didn't see any other Japanese?
I didn't see any others.
So, can you talk to me about the living conditions in combat, Mr. Goble?
Well, the best thing to read that Starvation Island book. It depends on whether the ships can supply you or not.
But just in your personal experiences on Guadalcanal, I mean, how often did you go, without changing your clothes, or how do you go to the bathroom, that kind of thing?
Well, we had no time to change clothes. I tell you, I'm lost now.
Do you want some water?
No, I don't. Better not get any water.
He doesn't like water, does he? Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. Mr. Goble, could you please tell me, sir, the story of how you met your wife, or your to-be wife, your future wife?
How do I start the story?
I'll just ask you, how did you meet your wife?
Oh, well, I was driving a taxi in Washington. I also owned a parking lot that I'd gotten from a Hoagie seafood restaurant. And I was trying to think.
She was a nurse, right?
Oh yeah, now I found out through a telephone call with one of them. There was four nurses sent to Washington to a children's hospital, and one of them kept calling me. I wasn't interested in her. I didn't particularly like her. But I decided I'll just take all four of them sightseeing, and that'll be the end of it. So I called up and asked for the nurses, and they gave me one of them. I don't know which one it was. And I told them, I'd be glad to take you sightseeing if all four of you can go. And that's the way I finally met all four of them. one of them in particular, I noticed. So I had another 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks, I kept calling about once a week. They all had the same day off, and but I began to pay particular notice to Catherine. And when they got ready to leave, go back to Newton, I took them to the bus station and told Catherine I'd see her on Thursday. This is on Monday. I said, I'll see you on Thursday. She didn't believe me, but I'd already planned to go to back to Statesville to take a little, see my family and everything. And so I drove up to the hospital the day I decided to see if I could see Catherine. And her sister come to, and they said there's a visitor here, wants to see who they come to see. So I told her, Catherine, and she went back and told Catherine that I was out there. She come out the door screaming.
What about Catherine? What was it about her that made you fall in love with her?
Well, I don't know. The human nature, I reckon.
And you were married before you went into service, right?
I was not. I got a transfer from a hospital in California to Bethesda Naval Hospital, and they give me time, extra time to. In fact, they gave me a month off to get to the hospital, and I went to see Catherine. After 2 or 3 visits, we set a wedding date in that month, and we got married in a friend's home rather than a church. And one of our good friends said, "Why don't you get married in our home?" So we did.
And how long were you guys married?
How long we were married? Well, I don't know exactly how many days. Anyway, she passed away on 10th.
2010?
Huh?
2010?
Yeah.
So it would have been,
66, I think.
yeah, so about 66 years you were married?
Yeah, I liked it. A half a month, been 67 years. I think that's right.
Yeah. Going back to Guadalcanal, when you were overseas, what was that like, not knowing if you were going to make it and you had a woman back home?
Well, what I thought was, I never thought I would get passed away. I thought I'd get exactly what happened. Somebody, when we got a call that we were going to cross the river and attacked, somebody asked me, "Well, you think you're going to make it?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to get my leg broke." And that's exactly what happened. And he told me, he said, "I'm going to die." And he didn't die that battle, but he died later.
Who was that?
I think it's Michelle or something like that. He's a Catholic, and he wouldn't fire a gun hardly.
He was killed after you were wounded?
Yeah.
So going back to Guadalcanal, sir, can you tell me the story about Corporal Edwards and how he was killed?
Well, now I can't place Edwards right now.
Don't worry. Well, I'll come back to that. There was an incident you had. I'll ask you to tell me about this story. And you were taking on Japanese sniper fire yourself, and the sniper was real close, and you jumped in a hole.
Oh, yeah.
So can you tell me that story, please?
Well, that's when Colonel Puller told me to pick 2 guys and cross the river and see if any Japanese were left over there. So we got about, it was a wide river, we got about 15, 20 yards to the bank when somebody opened fire from a tree, and the bullet come right close to my legs, but he never fired anymore. So we climbed the bank out of the river looking for him, never could place him. So I don't know.
But there was an incident where you jumped in a hole and it was full of dead Japanese.
That's when it was. I jumped in the Raider battalion had been in there and dug holes to fight with. It was foxhole, and I jumped in one, and there must have been at least 2 bodies in it. I got back out again, and my shoes smelled bad.
So these were some of the Japanese that had been killed by the Raiders who had been there before.
Yeah.
And then there's an incident that you had. You saved a man's life named Walter Olive. You met him at a reunion many years later. He was a lieutenant that had been shot, I think in the stomach, and you were told with 5 other men to carry a stretcher back to the first aid station.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember much about that.
But do you remember meeting Walter Olive again?
Oh, I know who you're talking about now.
Okay.
He's a 2nd lieutenant. We've been in a firefight after we crossed a little stream. That's when Puller had told me to go up and see if there any Japs on the ridge. And then we were moving back out. And Walter Olive had been shot. So Puller told me to get 5 men and carry Olive back because he had to have surgery or something right away. But he was from Florida.
And you carried him back?
We carried him back, I guess, 3 miles across the stream, and people were drinking water out of a swamp. It's so hot. I still had a little water, and I divided it with Walter Olive. He was a real good 2nd lieutenant.
Where was he wounded?
I don't really know where he's wounded. I believe he's in the side.
Yeah. And did you think he was going to survive?
I thought he would pass away. But years later, went to a reunion in Washington, D.C., and somebody come to me and said, "Look on the bulletin board, who's there?" I said, "Who's there?" He says, "You go see it, you'll be surprised," because everybody thought Walter died. Went up there listened and marked underneath, Walter Olive.
What was that like for you to meet him again?
Well, I don't know, it's I don't know, strange.
You saved his life.
I don't know as I did, but
if you didn't bring him back to the first aid station, he would have died.
Oh yeah.
You saved his life, Mr. Goble. I'm sure he told you the same thing.
Yeah, he did. Years later.
Mr. Goble, moving forward, that incident, can you talk to me about the patrol across the Matanikau River in September? The one with Major Rogers? Can you tell me what was the purpose of that patrol?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Well, that was after we carried the water off back. And the first time we got a chance to clean up, and I pulled my clothes off and got in the river, and I hardly got in the water when somebody yelled "Jappy," so I had to put my clothes back on. They sort of washed, but not much.
And then right after that, that's when you guys were getting ready to go across the Matanikau River on the patrol for Hill 84.
Well, we were ordered to get behind Japanese lines again, and there's another book that Major Hershey, the Candy Man, wrote a book. He was down there and he wrote a book about that battle.
Into the Valley.
Huh?
Into the Valley.
Yeah.
Did you meet John Hershey?
Oh yeah.
He was the journalist that was attached to you.
Yeah, that's right.
What did you think of him?
Well, he's just another Marine.
Did he do any fighting himself?
No. They weren't even allowed to carry weapons, but most of them did.
So, you were a part of a group, it was a very small group of men who made an attack behind the Japanese lines. The one that Major Rogers was leading, and the one where he was killed, you were in the same boat with him as you guys were going across the river, right? To Point Cruz?
Well, actually, there was, I guess, about 5 boats, and each boat held 39 men. And I never got to see which boat Major Rogers' body was in, but that was the time that Coast Guard made Medal of Honor. That's the same.
It's because he rescued you guys.
Yeah.
But before he had to rescue you guys, you made that invasion. And do you remember how you discovered the Japanese camp? The green telephone wire?
Yeah.
Can you tell me that, please?
Actually, we were moving that same group in I was telling you about. When we got off for a boat, we had to run in about 50 yards, and then it starts going up a mountain. That's when I stumbled on a telephone wire, and there was a sick Jap, and his thick jungle, and this Jap jumped up and run. Well, I had my back to him, and another guy saw him, and he said he must have been sick because he looked bad. But the jungle was so thick that he immediately got hid.
Well, he got away.
Yeah.
And so you guys discovered the Japanese camp, but the Japanese have gone.
They separated.
And then what do? You start going up the hill?
That's when we went up the ridge and got on top of that ridge.
And once you got on the top of the ridge, what did you see?
The only thing we could see the ocean and look up the ocean. There's a ship unloading more Japs. It says about a mile up the ocean. We could look along the beach all the way, and there's 2 or 3 Jap ships. One of them was unloading Japs.
And those Japanese soldiers that were being unloaded, where were they headed?
They were headed down the bay, down the beach, on a beach road towards us.
So all these Japanese are now coming to you.
Yeah, that's right.
And so what happens at that point?
Well, that's when Rogers got killed.
Can you tell me, you actually are one of the few people that witnessed that happening. Can you tell me why that is?
Rogers was going to get his leaders together and tell them what the plans were. And I was running towards him when the mortar hit him. I actually did not see him hit or see him afterwards because I hit the ground myself.
So you were running towards
Major Rogers.
Because he put a call out to all the NCOs and the officers that he wanted to have a meeting to discuss what you guys would do.
That's right.
And so you're running towards Rogers. Are you taking on any other fire, or was it just one shell that...
As far as I know now, one shell.
So some Japanese mortarman probably saw all these officers together, and that's what he decided to do to it.
Well, there's a lot of Japanese in the jungles right there on the left of us. And I don't know how well they could see, but I know that one of my good friends that joined the Marines with me was killed in that action.
Who was that?
Johnny somebody. I don't remember right now.
And he was from North Carolina?
He was from eastern North Carolina.
And were you with him when he was killed, or what happened to him?
I was probably 200-300 yards from him because he was stationed off on the left side, and he wouldn't leave his gun. He stayed there till he was just about out of shells.
You're talking about John Giles.
Yeah.
Or Giles, Giles.
Yeah, that's the one.
You, before we get to Mr. Giles and his sacrifice, how close were you to Major Rogers when that mortar came in?
Close enough to feel a concussion.
So were you pushed back by the concussion?
I don't remember well enough. All I know, I was down on my belly.
And so Major Rogers, he was killed by the shell, right?
Yeah, his insides was blown out.
Who, Major Rogers?
Yeah.
Were any of the other officers wounded?
A man from Winston-Salem had his arm about half blowed off, so he had to take his arm off.
And that was a captain.
Yeah.
It was Captain Cockrell was killed. Do you remember the captain's name?
Not right now.
That's fine. So Rogers was killed, the captain was wounded, and after that first mortar, isn't that when you guys started taking on a lot of fire?
Well, yeah, I'd got down off the side of the mountain next to the edge of the jungle, so I was pretty well covered. But I didn't know how many was between me and the beach. It's probably 100 yards from me to the beach, and there must have been 200 or 300 people in that 100 yards waiting to load boats.
You mean the Japanese or Americans?
As Americans.
Immediately after Major Rogers was killed, was everyone trying to get back down to the beach? Was that just the next plan? I mean,
I don't know what his plan was, but that's what happened. We were ordered to move down to the beach as fast as we could get to get control of our platoon.
So at this point, can you tell me about John Giles? Where was he set up?
If he was going to make a landing, he was on the left side, far down, probably 50 yards or so before set his machine gun up, and he held him off unless he was just about out of there, and his loader left, and he lived a lifetime. Du Bois lived, and he used to come to our reunions, and he was a loader for John Giles.
Did you always hold that against him, that he left Giles by himself?
You don't know. Maybe Giles ordered him. You don't hold things against him, as far as I know.
Are you the one that told Giles to get set up over there, or did he do that on his own, or?
He was probably, I don't know, he's probably ordered. He's in the dog company and I was in B company, different company.
So all of the Marines are up on the top of Hill 84, and is it thick jungle on the top of the hill?
No, it's no trees, grass this high.
Grass up to your chest?
Yeah.
What do you remember about the Japanese fire, the mortars and the machine guns that were coming in?
Most of them were hitting down the ridge from us, not up on top. Most of them were hitting, you had to go either come through it or go down through it. Because you couldn't tell where the next one's going to hit.
So my understanding is that 60 Marines were killed in this operation. What would you say most of them were killed from? Snipers or machine gun fire? Or?
I'd say most of them machine gun fire.
And did you see Giles before he set up the machine gun?
No, I did not.
Can you tell me what kind of person was John Giles?
He was just another Marine, another good Marine.
How old would you say he was when he was killed?
I don't know, he was probably in the Marine Corps when he was probably 20 or 21 years old.
How long were you guys on the top of the hill before you guys made it down?
Probably 4 hours, maybe not quite that much. That's where the one stripped off with their undershirts and spelled help.
So can you tell me about that?
Well, the only thing I know about that was I did not see it, but I read about it enough.
Oh, I thought that you were one of the ones who took off your shirt.
No.
Who did that?
I don't even know that.
But from where you were, you didn't see the shirts at all?
I couldn't see them from where I was. The grass had to be pretty short there.
And so some other Marines, after Rogers had been killed, decided to use their shirts to spell the word help.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
A plane flying over had seen some action, so he come back to see what was going on, and flew over again, and he saw the word help spelled out, and then he immediately radioed Puller through. I don't know how he did that. About our position and what was happening.
And so then you guys make your way down towards the beach, because now that the Coast Guard knows that you need help, they're coming.
They're already there.
They're already there waiting?
Yeah, Doug Monroe's set up his Higgins boat was firing in, and he kept firing until he got killed. And he was the only Coast Guards ever got the Medal of Honor.
When you got down to the beach, Mr. Goble, did you see Monroe, or had he already been killed?
We didn't. It's just another boat, as far as we were concerned.
But so by the time you guys got to the beach, all the Coast Guard boats were there firing at the Japanese?
No, they were not. They were loading up, getting out of there. See, a Higgins boat holds 39 men, and there's 40 or 50 men get in a boat on top of each other. And I was ordered to hold off the rear end, and I stayed with my men at the rear end until the last boat was coming, and they had to pull me in over the railing to get it, and the boat was already loaded, but they was able to get me in.
So you were the last one off?
I don't know. I couldn't say that.
But there's a good chance that you were one of the last ones off?
Something like that.
Could you please, Mr. Goble, the Coast Guard boats that were they there the entire time waiting for you guys?
No, they were not. In fact, they started in first, and the Japs started opening up on them, and they turned around and went back towards the ship and pulled her. And by that time, they got aboard the ship, and he ordered them to go regardless of how bad it was, to go in and pick them up. And every one of them did exactly what he said to do.
But how did you get from the top of Hill 84? How did you get from the top down to the beach? Because that's where the jungle is with the Japanese.
Not exactly.
No?
There's thin woods there, and the trails have been cut through it. So, of course, I know I was the last one to come off the mountain.
But on your way down, do you encounter any Japanese?
No, I couldn't tell how many. There weren't any Japanese I could see. They're all in jungle. Once you get in jungle, dressed like they do, you can't see them.
So the Japanese who were attacking you guys on Hill 84, it was from a distance usually with mortars and machine guns. It's not like they rushed your positions.
They had Japanese had been stationed and fighting there on our left side, and we didn't know about them coming down from those ships unloading. So that made them double strength, one on each side.
So you guys were almost surrounded.
Eventually, we were surrounded.
But most of the fire you were taking was machine gun fire and mortars, correct?
That's right.
What is that like to have mortars going off around you?
You don't pay too much attention to that. You're too busy trying to get past.
I mean, as your role as a sergeant, Mr. Goble, before you guys decided to get back down to the beach, the 4 hours that you were up there, as a sergeant, what were you doing? I mean, were you setting up your men? Were they going on patrols looking for the Japanese in the jungle?
No, they weren't. They were down in the grass because the ship was firing in there. One ship was firing in there. So they were down in the grass. Yeah.
That's right. So there was an American destroyer that came up to the shore. Once the Japanese started surrounding you guys, this American destroyer came.
We were ordered to lay down in the grass.
While the destroyer did what?
While they fired and covered the range between us and the ship. That's what they were doing. They were dropping their shells between us and the ship.
Do you know if there were any cases of friendly fire? Did the American destroyer, did that wound or kill any of the Marines?
I don't know. You don't know exactly what's going on.
But from your position, were those American shells pretty close?
Oh yes, on the ridge. It had to be within 15 or 20 yards.
That's how close the shells were getting
Some
to you?
of it, yeah.
Boy, what goes on in your mind at this time, Mr. Gold? What are you thinking about?
I was thinking about her on the opposite side of the hill was any Japs over there. Because I already went to another man, said, look, now you and I are going to take off. Once the Japs take this ridge, we're going to go over the ridge down on the other side and go into the jungle. That was my idea. He agreed with me that we would go down the other side of the hill. Through the jungle was pretty thick, and figured that if there's any Japs there, we might be able to bypass them into the mountains.
Eventually, you were able to get on the last boat that was leaving the mountain.
As far as I know, I'm not sure.
Were the Japanese firing at you guys as you were getting on the boat?
Yeah, definitely they were.
What was that like? I mean, how close was the fire getting to you?
Well, Doug Monroe's boat was maybe 15 or 20 feet from me, and he got killed. He got the Medal of Honor.
And so the Japanese are now, could you actually see them on the beach firing, or are they still in the jungle firing?
I had no intention of studying it, looking for them, so I didn't see any Japs.
So you said you went over the rails into the boat.
That's right.
And are you laying there flat?
I landed on top of another Marine.
Okay, so you get back to the ship, and then what happens?
They unloaded us, not at the beach, not at another ship. They unloaded us at the beach near headquarters.
And then, when you and these other Marines, after you've gone through such an intense experience in such a little amount of time, I mean, do you guys talk about it? Or, I mean, do you guys, when you're no longer in that situation?
Well, you get organized, get all your men together again, and take orders. We moved us back in the jungle.
Do you know, were there any Marines left on Hill 84 alive?
They think they was pretty sure that there was 2 or 3 left, because we saw a rifle firing up in the air. I think twice I saw a rifle fire.
The tracers?
Tracer, yeah. They just fired straight up. That meant that somebody either wounded and they figured there's lost 31 men there. So it had to be some of them too.
But they were found eventually, right?
And then,
I thought that the raiders came back and they found some of them. I could be wrong.
could have been. I don't know.
You don't know what happened to those guys who were left there?
I don't know. I don't think any of them lived.
So, after this incident, my understanding, this was the first patrol across the Matanikau River in September. There was another one you guys went on in October. I believe that's the one that you were wounded and you got the Silver Star for. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Before I interviewed you today, I spoke to a historian who goes back to Guadalcanal regularly. And he gave me a couple questions to ask, and he says that Chesty Puller wanted revenge on the Japanese after the first patrol went so badly, and that's why you guys went back on the second patrol. Is that correct?
Well, when a patrol gets wore out and tired and lose people, they try to replace them if they can. And that's usually what they held us in a position on the mountain, and drizzle rained all night. We slept in the rain. And the next morning, we started to cross the river. From daylight, now this is a whole battalion, from daylight until my platoon got down there, it was getting dark again. And now in South Pacific, when the sun goes down, it gets dark immediately. So by the time I got into the jungle, going down into the river, you couldn't see your hand before your eyes. But in the jungle, the trail, or the little limbs on the trail were cut off. So you follow a little trail, maybe not very wide. And I finally come out my platoon finally come out on the edge of the water. And there's an old Jap tents, homemade tents, right there on the edge. There were no Japs in them. Japs had moved on. So that was encouraging. So we crossed the river in the dark on a log, big log. Water, remember, was 6 inches deep over that log. I was wet, clothes wet, started climbing the bank of the river, and it was muddy. I got about 2/3 of the way up, skidded all the way back down. So I began to dig in with my toes and got up, and we formed a chain and got the rest of the platoon up with a chain of men. I had to threaten to knock him in the head with the butt of my rifle. He wouldn't get in that chain. He said when they go, they'll all go, and we'll all be covered with mud. But he finally come on and got him up there okay. And we finally, it was about 2 o'clock when we got to the top, and that's when I told him not to play cards down in the flashlights. But you know, the moon was shining up there, and it's pretty light after we got out of the jungle. That's when we slept between dead people.
The dead Marines.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me again about the card game? What happened?
Well, anyway, they didn't. I don't think they went down and got their cards.
But so this is at nighttime, and some of the Marines are bored, so they decide to play poker.
Yeah.
And they're using flashlights.
I don't know. They had to have some kind of light.
And once it was 4 of them.
Yeah.
Right?
2 on each side of the gully.
And once you saw that happening, what did you tell them?
I told them to get the hell out of there. The next round of the Japanese fire is going to come up that ridge. And sure enough, it did. And they didn't, neither one of them got hit, but the cards was blowing it away.
Now, this is all right before you go down into the valley.
Oh, yeah, this is about 11 o'clock when I went down into the valley. And this is daylight.
The cards was during the daytime,
Yeah.
and then you went down in the valley at 11 o'clock at night?
No,
In the morning?
we waited, had breakfast, whatever we had to eat, waited till we got orders, till Puller got the rest of the platoon set up. Well, what we did is sit around and talk until he got his outfit in order. Then he ordered me to take my platoon across the valley.
So what was the strategic importance of this valley?
It wasn't a very big valley. It's probably about 25 or 30 yards at the bottom. And it was like two banks. The ridge come up this way and this way. Then there's a low place. We had to cross to that low place.
And Puller told you to lead that?
Well, he'd already given me that platoon before we started in the morning and told me where to cross the valley.
Before you guys go and cross the valley, my understanding is that this was known as Puller's turkey shoot.
Some people call it that.
So why was it called Puller's turkey shoot, sir?
Well, they come to find out that there was a big area there that the Japanese had dug out for some kind of mine. I don't know what kind. And they moved their 900 men in that low place. Away from the battle they'd been fighting, and moved what was left of them in that low place. And Julia Pullett put me across in case they tried to climb out the right side of that ridge. And he got his men. He had the rest of the company, rest of the battalion over there, and he get them up on the edge, and the Japs would run up edge on the other bank of this low place, and he'd kill them. And then they'd run up the other side, and he'd kill them. He finally killed 700 some Japs, and he went down and searched their bodies for any information. Got all kinds of maps and things from them. And while I was on the other side, that same valley, when I placed my Puller said, no, my command officer says place them about 30 steps apart, and you don't have enough men to cover the whole thing. So he put, I don't know where he got them, he put 3 or 4 men with me, and I got them where I wanted them, and I walked back up to see if everything's okay. And one of the men that I first placed down the ridge come running back up, said, I'm hit. He had this gravel above his mortar and fell right close, and gravel hit his face, a little bit of bleeding in his face. So he was, I told him to go to get it patched up and get back there. So he did. And by that time I heard the machine gun fire. So I went I got up there, and one of my Marines down there said, Billy's hit. So I went and run up there, and he's bent over like this, groaning, and I couldn't see where he's hit. So I knew he's hit in the body someplace. So I grabbed a hold of him, started dragging him, and forgot the rule of safety. Go zigzag instead of straight. I started dragging him safety straight back across the ridge. And if I'd have got 2 or 3 more steps, I think I'd been safe. Anyway, next thing I knew, I felt like somebody hit me in the back of the head with a baseball bat. So I'd been one time playing baseball, I got hit in the back of the head, and it felt like exactly like that. So I felt no blood or anything. And I couldn't, I felt, and I was laying on my foot, and by that time Corbin had gotten there. I said, Corbin, whose foot am I laying on? He says, it's your foot you're laying on. So that foot there leg was almost disconnected to this other part. My head was laying on my foot. I had no pain. He gave me shots, 2 shots, and I still had no pain.
What did you find out had actually happened to your leg?
Well, when I woke up, I was aboard a boat. And I knew they had put some kind of splint straight in my leg out.
But you had been shot.
Yeah, I knew. I guess I was in shock because I wasn't in any pain.
No, I'm saying you weren't hit by shrapnel from a mortar. It was bullets that hit you.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It was 25 karat bullet.
How many of them?
Huh?
How many bullets hit you?
How big?
How many?
Oh, just that one bit.
It was the one bullet that hit your knee?
It didn't hit my knee. Hit above my knee up here.
In your femur?
No, it's back here. I used to could feel it, pick it up as I close to the skin, and as life went on, it kept moving. Now I can't find it. But every time they take an X-ray, they spot it. It's moved a little more.
So just to backtrack a little bit, Mr. Goble, all this happened at night. Is that right?
No.
This was all in the daytime.
This is all daylight.
Exactly. What possessed you to run out to help William Rust, knowing that you were exposing yourself to fire? Why?
I just thought, I don't know what I thought. I don't remember thinking about it. Just, if I'd been thinking good, I'd been dragging him sideways, turning another sideways, instead of straight back. Because he's got his machine guns. He got his machine gun set up straight, and he couldn't very well move a machine gun.
But did you even think about it? You know, when you heard that, like you said, Billy's hit, immediately you just started running to go help him?
Yeah, after one of the other Marines called me and said Billy's been hit. And I started checking him, see how bad he's hit. I talked to him maybe a half a minute before I started moving him.
What were you guys, what did you say to him and what did he say to you?
I don't remember. I don't remember what I said. I know he wasn't talking.
He wouldn't say anything?
No.
But he was still alive?
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, can you tell me the part of the story how you were laid right next to him?
That's the boy, when it finally got we loaded on a Higgins boat. There's two people covered with blankets, and I looked under one blanket, and it was William Rust.
The man who you tried to save.
Yeah.
What was that like for you to see that?
It didn't bother me much because I knew he'd been hit.
Just to backtrack, Mr. Goble, you had mentioned before all this happened, you talked about Colonel Puller's turkey shoot. So there was about 900 Japanese in a lower elevated area, and he set up you on one perimeter and the rest of the company on the other side to make sure that the Japanese didn't escape.
Yeah.
And was everyone opening up on them, or was just him?
Oh, he had the rest of the battalion. He had the whole battalion except what I had over there. He probably had 200 men.
So you were not one of the men firing down there, because you were in a different area.
I was across that other side of the ridge.
So your platoon was not firing in that area?
No.
Could you see what was happening?
No.
So later on you heard about this turkey shoot. I mean, you would have been able to hear the fire though, right?
No, I don't remember hearing the fire.
And yesterday when we were talking briefly, you had mentioned, can you tell me the part of the story? As you were going into the valley, 2 of the men in your platoon were killed.
Well, oh yeah.
Can you explain to me where does that come in the story, please?
I don't know whether that was when we landed or when I was already in. Things are getting confused.
You're doing great. The way you talked about it yesterday, you talked about it as right after you went into the valley. Does that ring a bell for you? I can tell you their names. We'll take a break. Mr. Goble, I found the part of the memoir that I wanted to ask you about. I'm just going to read what your words were, okay? You wrote that we were ordered to cross a narrow valley, waist high in jungle grass. Part of us had gotten across when 2 machine guns opened up, killing 2 of our men. We had taken the ridge but were receiving heavy mortar fire. Some of my men were hit, but not that bad, and they continued to fight.
I can't place that.
That's fine. Because I already got him saying that yesterday. But do you remember the fact that 2 of the men were killed as you guys got into the valley?
Yeah.
Because it was from machine gun fire. As you guys got into the valley, you were taking on a lot of machine gun fire?
No, not too heavy. I don't think it's but 1 or 2 machine guns.
Okay. The first part of your Silver Star, Mr. Goble, it's a 2-part citation, right? One is how you tried to save William Rust's life, and the other part is it says Sergeant Goble observed that his company was receiving heavy mortar and machine gun fire. With utter disregard for his own personal safety, he stood on a bare, exposed ridge and courageously directed fire of the rifled grenadiers of his platoon.
Yeah, that's right.
So what does that mean, that you stood up in an exposed ridge?
Well, that's the same time that Russ got hit. Yeah. When I was up on the ridge, that must have been when he got hit. Because when I come back down, that's when I found out he.
So were you using a rifle grenade yourself?
Yeah, I was aiming. He was holding the stock on the. He was holding the butt of his rifle, and I was holding the barrel, and I was moving the barrel where the angle I wanted the mortars to fall.
The grenades.
Yeah, the grenade.
Who was holding the butt?
A fella, I forget his name now. He's a little Italian boy.
Okay. So this is before you went to go help Rust. You saw that there was machine guns firing at you and your men.
Yeah.
So you took your your rifle had a rifle grenade apparatus.
Yeah.
And someone was holding the rifle butt and you were aiming it.
That's right.
And who was firing it?
A little Italian boy.
He pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And so, how far away were these Japanese machine guns?
Probably 200 yards. Maybe not quite that.
Is this in a thick jungle?
Where he was is thick. Where we were at Ball Mountain.
So he had a good target at you guys, but you couldn't really see them. Or were you able to see them easily?
Well, I'd say about this much was hidden. Just maybe my shoulders was above where he could spot me.
Okay. How many machine guns would you say there were?
I think there was 2 in there.
And it says here on the citation, you directed fire of the rifle grenadiers in your platoon and told the Japanese machine guns were silenced. So how many rifle grenadiers are you directing?
Just one.
It's just you and him?
Just me.
Just you and that Italian Marine?
That's right.
So the 2 of you were the ones that knocked out the machine guns?
That's what our commanding officer said.
But from your position, could you see?
I could not see the jungle. I could tell before I went up on the ridge, I spotted right where I thought the guns were. And then I got up and marked a certain tree that he must be near that. So I was surprised. The first one I fired fell exactly where I wanted it to, and I was surprised. So I think that may have been where the rest of them fired.
But do you know the damage that the rifle grenades caused to the Japanese?
I had no idea. According to the record, this become quiet then.
Do you remember that after you fired your rifle grenades, it was all quiet?
Yeah.
How many grenades did it take to knock out those 2 machine gun nests?
I only had three grenades. And I sent the little Italian to get some more. And I was waiting on him to get back for some more. When I decided to go down and check the rest of them out, the line of people. And that's when Roy,
Russ.
no, the guy that told me, the name is Roy something, from Georgia. He's still living.
Oh, Roy Hughes.
Yeah, he was the one who told me that Rust was hit.
Was Roy Hughes with you on the Little Dunkirk operation?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a different story. But the point is, with the 3 rifle grenades that you had, you were able to silence the 2 Japanese.
As far as we know, we don't know. Maybe they run. Maybe they picked up a machine gun and left. The only thing we know is
But the point is, they stopped firing after you fired at
But
them.
somebody must have set up another gun because they were the ones that got me.
I'm just kind of confused. Why does it take two men to do the rifle grenades?
One of them, you got the butt of the rifle on the ground, and you got to angle of fire. If you want to go to that tree over there, you got to figure out how high to hold that rifle. You only move about that much. That means 50 yards over there.
Show the camera. Moving it how much means what?
Might move that rifle. The butt of the rifle's in the ground. You move the barrel of the rifle very little bit like that. And that means a big move where that shell's gonna fall.
So if you're just doing it by yourself, you're not going to get an accurate target.
No, you can't.
So you need one person holding it down, one person aiming it, and the person who's holding it down is the one who's going to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And so that's what you and that Italian Marine did. Would you say, I mean, what would you say when you wanted him to fire? You would just say, fire?
Yeah. I said, okay. That's all I said.
And during all this time, are you taking on fire?
Huh?
Are you, when you're up on this exposed area, you know, figuring out how to aim the rifle grenade? Or are the Japanese firing at you?
No, I figured out where to try to land the mortar.
But I'm saying, were the Japanese firing at you as you were directing the rifle grenade?
Yeah. I don't think he's firing me.
And then, so you sent the Italian kid to go get more rifle grenades, and then Roy Hughes comes and says, Billy's hit.
Yeah.
How far away was William Rust from your position, would you say, sir?
Well, see, he was in the middle. I was up here talking to this rifle grenade here. Then went back to Rust, and I went and checked with Roy Pugh, and before I got to him, he told me that William Rust was hit.
But how far away was Rust from where you spoke to Roy Hughes? I mean, when you heard that Rust had been hit, how far did you have to travel to get to him?
Oh, about 5 or 6 steps.
Oh, he was right there.
Yeah.
And he had been shot where?
I don't know, never did see it. I know he shot someplace in the body.
Okay. And how do you pick him up? How do you care? How do you decide how to do that?
Well, he was sitting sort of stooped over with his hands on his stomach. And I just caught him under his arms.
So you're carrying him.
Dragging him.
Okay. Are you going backwards?
Yeah, half backwards.
Okay, and you're dragging him.
Yeah.
And how far did you make it before?
Well, in times like that, you don't know. I might have driven 50 steps. I might have driven 10 steps. I mean, in action like that, you don't know.
Of course. But the next thing you know is you're laying on the ground.
Yeah.
And you didn't feel, I mean, I know you said you felt like you'd been hit in your head, but where your leg was, you didn't feel any pain?
I couldn't see my leg because I was laying on my own foot. My head was on my foot.
That's how far back it had been blown up? Or it had been...
Where the bone had been shattered. So the leg was just turned under.
So the bone had been shattered as she mentioned it, and so your leg just turned? I mean, you could feel your foot with your head?
Yeah. I couldn't feel anything.
But
I couldn't feel anything.
But that's when you asked the corpsman, what am I laying on?
Yeah, that's when I found it. There's somebody's foot under my head. I laying on my shoe.
And so the corpsman gets to you, and they put you on a stretcher and bring you back?
I'm out. I don't know what's going on.
They gave you
Next
shots.
thing, next thing,
Or morphine. What do you remember? What did the corpsman give you when he came to you?
he gave me 2 shots, but I don't know it.
Of morphine.
Yeah, I guess it was.
You're only supposed to give someone 1 shot. 2 shots could kill them.
He gave me 2 shots.
It must have been because that's how severe your injury looked. Did he dress it at all or anything? Do you know?
I have no idea. I don't wake up until I'm back at the tent city.
Which is you're back at a tent city. It's a hospital, right?
Yeah.
And what happened that night?
Well, the ships come in and shell, and one shell, the hospital is halfway between the airport and the ocean. They figure when they set up a hospital there, they figure that they'll overshoot trying to hit the airport and not shoot it where the tents were. So I woke up. I don't know how long I'd been in. I was still in a tent city. That night, the ships come in. I do remember the noise of the ship a little bit, but a shell hit a tent next to me and destroyed it.
This was from a Japanese ship.
Yeah.
And what was in the tent?
What was that?
The tent that was next to you?
Yeah, that's what the corpsman told me. That tent there is gone.
And what was in the tent though?
2 people.
2 Marines,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I understand. I don't know what I passed out. I mean, I'm passed out there for 2 or 3 days almost.
But I mean, you got that close to death again. A shell landed right next to you in the tent.
As far as I know, that's what I was told.
And 2 of the Marines were killed in that tent.
That's what I was told. I didn't see it or didn't hear it.
But then you get put on the ship, right?
No. Next morning they put 5 of us on an airplane marked with a big red cross, and we were going along. We were going pretty good, and I'm tied to a wing. I can't. They don't have room for me inside the plane, so I'm tied to a plane wing, and very comfortable. Could, and it was going on real nice. And all at once we dived, and I could see the ocean coming up as. So when it leveled off, it was right above the water. And I asked somebody that I could talk to there, corpsman, I think, what happened. He said 3 Japanese fighter planes come diving at us. I guess they saw the red cross on the plane. Anyway, there was a cloud there, and we went in that cloud and come out in the clear weather.
And then eventually, when you get put on a hospital ship, you had another close call?
Well, that night, they hadn't got to me yet to fix my leg. That night, a destroyer come in and anchored, and didn't put it anchored in the right place. Anyway, a Japanese ship or submarine or something come in the bay and blew the rear of that destroyer off. The destroyer could be towed after that, but it didn't sink. But they hit the rear of.
And 2 men were killed in that as well?
That's what I hear. All I know is what people tell you.
Oh, your daughter had mentioned this to me. What did the doctors want to do with your leg?
Well, I got to California after about, I don't know, 6 weeks or so there. The doctors just decided they might have to take the foot off, my bottom leg off. So he said, I'm going home Friday and I'll make up my mind. Come back Monday. He said, I'm going to send you back east to an eastern hospital. So he didn't take my foot off.
What was that like, those 2 days on the weekend, not knowing if, these are the last 2 days with your foot?
Well, I figured I was better off going east. He told me they had doctors who could take care of it.
I'm going over my final notes, sir, and if I'm correct, you wrote in your memoir that after Major Rogers was killed, you picked up his glasses, his binoculars.
No, another Marine picked him up and gave him to me. The other Marine took his pistol and gave me their binoculars.
Do you still have those?
I did for a long time. I don't know what happened to them.
Oh boy, if you guys are able to find that, you need to donate that to some museum. Do you remember a Marine named Harry Morrissey?
No.
He was from B Company. He was killed. Harry Morrissey.
Oh yeah, Morrissey. Yeah. Well, now he was a conscientious objector. Now,
Do you know what happened to him?
well, I think he was the one that first one got killed. We crossed the artificial bridge. They made the bridge out of parts of, I don't know what, anyway, you could drive a truck across the bridge. And the whole battalion crossed the bridge. And Marcy was the last one in it. And 2 Japanese come out from under the bridge and shot him. And immediately the man in front of Marcy turned around and killed those two Japs.
Did you hear about this happening, or you saw this?
No, I was for that. This is the whole battalion.
Oh, I see.
I was ahead.
Do you remember a Marine named Charles Lentine?
Last name?
Lentine.
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 Yeah, I remember.
What do you remember about him? Who was he?
I don't really know Lentine. I believe he was on the mountain with us when I think, yeah, he's the one I invited that if we had to leave, we'd go through the jungle. Lentine.
But he was killed.
I found out later he was killed later in the battles. Not that same, but.
Do you remember Alvin Cockrell?
Yeah, Cockrell.
He was the captain.
I can't place him right now.
I'll tell you in 1 second. Then the last name, sir, was Richard Weir.
Yeah, I remember him too, but
What do you remember about Richard Weir?
I don't remember anything about it.
Do you remember how he was killed, or?
No, I don't.
That's fine. Were you close buddies with him, though?
Huh?
Were you good buddies with Richard Weir?
Yeah, I just know him. He friends like any other Marine.
You mentioned early on in your memoirs that a lot of the Marines passed out from heat stroke.
Oh yeah, lack of water. A lot of them drink their water. You know, I didn't drink but a half a canteen all day sometimes during our hike.
But a lot of Marines would just drink it all?
You know, I don't know how fast anyway they'd run out of water.
And when they would pass out from heat stroke, what would you guys do?
And there was a corpsman working on them. Corpsman take them over.
Were there any occasions that you guys took Japanese prisoners?
I don't remember taking any Japanese prisoners.
Do you remember when you first got on Guadalcanal? Do you remember hearing about the Gotage Patrol?
The what?
The Gotage Patrol? Frank Gotage, he led some Marines on a patrol, and the Japanese pretended that they wanted to surrender, and so Frank Gotage took a group of Marines, and the Japanese captured them and tortured them.
I remember dimly something about it. Don't really remember enough to talk about it.
That's fine. The last thing was going to be about, there was an incident you had on one of the streams that you were getting your water from. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I guess that is the time I come, the first bath I got.
What did you find in the water that everyone was drinking?
Oh, I was when we was carrying Walter Olive back in a stretcher. Well, I went up the stream and see. It looked like fresh water. I wasn't going to get it. And there's two bodies. The flesh was falling off of them.
Were these Marines or Japanese?
Japanese.
In the water?
Yeah.
And this was upstream?
Yeah.
So everyone was getting water from down the stream?
Yeah, they were. I didn't get any.
What made you want to go up there and check to see?
Because somebody had passed word, well, don't drink water. They might be dead in Japan.
And so you went above where the Japanese were to get your water?
Yeah.
Like you went farther upstream to get the water?
I didn't get any water. I still had half a canteen.
Got it. What life advice do you want to give to future generations, Mr. Goble?
Well, the only thing I know is just tend to your own business.
But for your great grandkids, what would you want them to know?
And take care of what their grandpa and grandma tell them to do.
What would you want to say to all the men who were killed overseas in World War II? What would you want them to know?
We all appreciate they're giving their life to save somebody else's life.
When you came home from the war, did you have difficulties readjusting to civilian life?
I didn't bother to talk to civilians hardly.
What?
I don't remember talking to.
No, I'm saying when you first came back to the United States, did you have difficulty readjusting to normal life?
Oh, no, none at all.
No nightmares or anything?
Didn't seem to bother me.
What about loud noises? Did they bother you?
So what?
Did loud noises bother you?
No.
Whoa. Where were you when you found out that you had been awarded the Silver Star?
Well, where that picture is, I was in California, at the hospital in California, when I was able to walk with a cane by that time, and they told me to put my uniform on and follow me. So I said, "What's going on?" said, well, Colonel, Dr. Shearer wants to see you. So there's a building up on the ridge at the hospital. So he walked me up there, and then he told me what it was. You've been awarded a Silver Star. So
Did you have any idea before that?
I had no idea until I got up there.
What was that like to hear that you've been awarded the Silver Star?
Well, I don't know. You got something to think about. So he said, just wait here. So they marched I guess the rest of the hospital crew people in uniform, they was all in uniform. They marched them up there, had me and the colonel walk out in front of them, and that's when they gave me the Silver Star. I actually got 2 Silver Stars.
You got 2 Silver Stars?
One of them was crazy. I got back east to the hospital back east, and there a good while. And they got mail from headquarters about me getting the Silver Star. Well, I think the 8th and I barracks is the strictest barracks in the Marine Corps, and I guess they weren't going to be out maneuvered by somebody giving me the Silver Star before they did. So they gave me marched the whole regiment from Washington out there, and then me standing with the colonel, and the colonel presented the Silver Star, just like I didn't already have.
In California?
Yeah. I told him I got one in California. He didn't say anything. He said, just go ahead and we'll go right through this.
The picture that we have, is that in California or is that in?
That's the first one. That's the legal one.
Wow. Mr. Goble, what kind of person do you want to be remembered as?
Mostly honest and sensible. I don't know, it's just that I treat people well, I think. I don't know.
I guarantee you, from the limited time I've gotten to know you, the way people look at you and the way they talk about you, I think you treat people very well, right?
Yeah.
But when your friends and your family think of you in the future, what kind of person do you want them to think of you as? As a...
Well, I wouldn't know.
A good father?
Yeah.
A good husband?
A good husband, a good father, and a good church person.
Can you just quickly add that, your service didn't end after World War II ended? What did you and your wife do with your church?
They had early service, and we tried to go there all service to the early service.
I meant the mission trips.
Well, both of us really enjoyed those mission trips.
What would you do? Where would you guys go, and what would you do?
Sometimes we'd go to the same islands 2 or 3 times, and most times we went 2 times to the same island. We sometimes built a new church down in Panama. We had to build a new church. Then the church fell in.
And so you guys would build the churches from scratch?
Yeah, the that church down in Panama, well, the bugs eat the whole bottom out, and the church fell in.
Oh boy.
We dug all that dirt away, moved 18 inches of dirt all around, and put vinyl, covered it back with dirt, filled it up with level and packed it in it, and so the bugs couldn't get in. Built a church on the ridge where you could look down at the Panama Canal.
And I know that you went back to Guadalcanal in 1975. I know Mr. Carl Scott told me about that. What was that like for you to go back there?
Well, it was just sort of like going to a new island. I don't know. You think about a lot of things.
And as you got older, Mr. Goble, and what was your favorite pastime out here? Your hiking group, can you tell me about that a little?
Yeah, we had a hiking group every Wednesday. I hiked around 62 years in the mountains. I hiked Grand Canyon twice. I hiked Presidential Mountain Range in New Hampshire at 5 mountains. Me and a buddy hiked all 5 of them twice.
Now the hiking group, you created the hiking group, right?
Yeah.
And all the members of the hiking group, what would you give them?
I made walking sticks for the ones that didn't have a right kind.
And it's not like you bought them, you made the sticks, right?
Yeah, I made them.
How many sticks do you think you've made over the years?
50-some.
Wow. And the story I wanted to hear about your hiking group is your daughter was mentioning there was an incident that you had a snake in your hand and
Yeah.
you put it on your head.
I did.
Can you tell me that? What did you do and why would you do that?
Well, there's a little snake I'd never seen before, so I checked, see if it's poison or not. So I seen it wasn't a poison snake. So I was walking a ridge. Ridge wasn't much wider than this, and I need both hands, one for a walking stick and one to get the bushes out of the way. So I put it in my cap, and it stayed there a little, and it went out the back side. It's a beautiful little snake.
You aren't afraid of snakes at all?
The last incident I had with a snake went down in Lost Cove, a place called Lost Cove, coming back out. This is the fall of the year, and there's colored leaves falling, all colored leaves falling. The trail was covered with leaves, and I started to make a step. I was leading this, and there's a rattlesnake there. That rattlesnake was ringing. If it wouldn't have been ringing his bell, I'd have stepped on it. But I had one foot up in there, and I was bouncing with my stick, and I stood there as long as I could stand there. Slowly put my foot down, and the snake got tired of rattling his rattler. He turned around and left.
Okay. Because we were kind of going back when you were training, they had everyone line up, and they selected every other Marine to go to Wake Island, and then the rest of you guys went to Cuba, right? And the guys who went to Wake Island were all, but only a few of them were killed when the Japanese attacked Wake Island.
Yeah, and there's something wrong with that. The ones that went to Wake Island never got there. The ones that got killed were the ones already on the island.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So what happened to the ones who go?
That the ship was ordered to turn around and go back to Hawaii, and that's where they was joined their new outfit.
Huh. Here's Zach Healy is the name of the man who taught you how to eat the cactus fruit. Sergeant Marine Salt Sergeant Heenley. Do you remember him? Zach Heenley? Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Where is he? Man.
It's gonna be time for supper in a little bit.
We're almost through, I swear. I'm just trying to find. You wrote about this one Marine in your. I'm just looking at his memoir.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote about this man named Ed Campbell, and I put a note to make sure to ask him about Ed Campbell because it was important. Oh, it was no, not Campbell, Edwards. Okay. No. Okay. Here, we're gonna wrap it up now. Just turn your head a little for me, please. Perfect. Mr. Goble, that story you told me about the Marine who was the last of the near the bridge, and the Japanese came and killed him, and then the guy in front of him turned and killed the two Japanese. That was Edwards, right? That was Corporal Edwards.
Yeah, you're right. It was.
Not Morrissey.
Morrissey got killed when we crossed the valley.
Was Morrissey one of the two men that was killed? That was near your Silver Star incident, right? That's fine. But do you remember where Morrissey was from?
No.
So, Mr. Goble, before the Little Dunkirk operation, Major Rogers, there was a religious service that was held. Do you remember anything about that service?
No, I wasn't in it.
You didn't go to any of the services?
No.
Okay. Do you remember seeing Henderson Field?
Oh yeah, of course.
What did it look like, Henderson Field? Was it just a dirt runway?
Well, no. They had wire, steel wire. You know what I was talking about. Look, I won't have to give up. This is enough.
The last thing I'll ask then is that can you tell us about the body cast?
Yeah.
You'll have to ask it. I mean,
Daddy, what did they put on the body cast that they usually used on the horses when a horse broke its leg?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Remember they put the bar between your legs?
Oh.
Cast?
I was in a body cast for 9 weeks. You talk about being in pain. You can get in pain in a body cast.
what do you mean?
You got a cast from here down, and you got a bar across your, and they carry you, they pick you up with that bar across there, and somebody can pick you up with the shoulder. That's a body cast.
And you were in that for 9 weeks.
Yeah.
This
And listen, I have enough of
Yeah.
this.
He's good.
Yeah. It's just. I swear this is the last thing. I swear. all I wanted you to do is, you're the only person I think alive that can shed light on this. You helped bury 13 bodies of Marines.
Yeah,
Were they from your platoon or?
from my cover, from our battalion.
And one of them was Captain Cockrell, correct?
One of them was Captain Cockrell.
So that was the incident with the 7 machine guns with the Japanese.
Oh yeah, there's probably a battalion of Japs in the jungle there. He got shot through the bullet went there and come out top of his head.
And you guys had to retreat, but you went back the next morning to bury the Marines.
That's right.
Why did you guys bury the Marines?
What are you going to do with them? You can't carry you're 5-7 miles away.
I thought it was to prevent the Japanese from looting them.
No.
But you were the one that actually helped do it and bury the.
No, I was one. I guess you call him a watchman.
Got it. But it was that incident. That's where your buddy Tommy, he thought you had been killed.
Yeah.
The day before, because all the bullets were hitting the tree bark around you, and he thought you had been killed. And he said he's going to be sergeant now.
Yeah.
Do you remember those bullets hitting off the bark around you?
I remember very well that I rolled over and got behind this big tree. Roots were that big roots. Well, I hope it's worthwhile.
It was worth it. If you were to give me some advice for my life, is there anything you recommend?
I guess keep doing what you need to do.
I really appreciate that. And I want you to know, Mr. Goble, I believe in my heart that if it was not for people like you, I would not be here today.
Maybe so.
I want you to know that you've given lots of people an opportunity at a full and a free life, and no one can ever take that away from you.
Thank you.
God bless you, sir. If there is a heaven, I really believe people like you would be there.
Yeah.
Mr. Goble.
The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting Silver Star to Sergeant Joseph O. Goble, number MCSN 3262, United States Marine Corps, for conspicuous gallantry and interpreted during action against enemy Japanese forces on Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, in October 9, 1912, acting platoon sergeant of the 3rd Platoon of the 1st Battalion, Submarines, 1st Marine Division, who was there engaged in battle at a point west of the Kaikakai River. Sergeant Goble observed that the company recovered a heavy mortar and machine gun far from him, a wooden draw to the right of his position. With utter disregard for his own personal safety, he stood up in a bare range and courageously directed fire of the rifle grenade of the platoon's unit. The guns of the Japanese position were silenced. Later, during the same action, he rushed forward across a heavily shelled area and received a bad wound while dragging a serious wounded comrade into a place of safety. In the heroic action, conduct was in keeping with the highest regard of the United States Naval Service.
That was great.
I wish you couldn't understand.